The 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics face a growing boycott movement.
I think they've been having these discussions for some time in the US. We know about a month ago they put this before a congressional group, a Senate committee.
Let's not honor the Chinese government by having heads of state go to China.
What's up, guys? It's your boy LeLe Farley. As I'm sure most of you already know, I love languages. I've studied Chinese for well over a decade, 而且说实在的，我在整个过程中最享受的就是交中国朋友，可以跟来自不同文化背景的人去交流、去探索这个世界。
中国男人更喜欢吃羊
我更喜欢奶牛。
I'm an extroverted guy, and though it might sound like I'm hosting an episode of Barney, exchanging ideas with people and learning from each other, it's like my favorite thing about being a person, or human being, being alive. I mean, that's why I love comedy so much. When you make someone laugh, there's a genuine connection built on some degree of understood truth. I remember I showed the first episode of Cold War 2020 to a Chinese buddy of mine. Despite having no interest in politics, when it got to this part,
是的，这个是英语。没事儿，我们给你概括一下，他们的意思是 "fuck China."
he bursted out laughing, but then covered his mouth and whispered, 我不应该笑，我不应该笑. I was like, yes, you should, dude, because, at least in my opinion, when it comes to dealing with the pain and suffering of life, laughter is the best medicine. And despite what the CCP propaganda machine and other paid-off shills might say, the people of China are suffering. The reality of their dystopian future is becoming clearer by the day, and honestly, it eats me up inside. I mean, I want China to flourish. I want the world to see the brilliance and charm that I see. But that's impossible so long as the Communist Party remains in power. And while it's easy to be pessimistic here, we can't just give up. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say the fate of the world is at stake. COVID is just a symptom. Okay, the disease is the Communist Party. Now, how do we go about removing that disease? Unfortunately, with the rapid progress of technology, the chances of Chinese people rising up and overthrowing the party are little to none. But the growing pace and scale of Chinese government censorship does reflect a sense of paranoia, specifically coming from Xi Jinping. Though his anti-corruption campaigns severely weakened the various factions within the CCP, he's recently been unusually loud about quashing growing dissent within the mid to upper echelons of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, if you're interested in the specifics, feel free to check out the recently published 2021 edition of Xi Jinping's Selected Discourses on Comprehensively Ruling the Party with Severity. Or you can just take my word for it. Now, it might sound subjective, especially if you don't speak Chinese, but Xi Jinping is not a smart dude. And unlike the leaders before him, he only speaks Chinese, and thus most likely has a very inaccurate view of the world, exacerbated by bootlicking minions all too scared to report anything resembling truth. I mean, am I the only guy that finds this kind of terrifying?
谁妄想这样干，必将在14多亿中国人民用血肉铸成的钢铁长城面前
Please do not underestimate the stupidity of a paranoid dictator backed into a corner. I mean, this is the guy that believes unification with Taiwan is an inevitable requirement for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese people, and that Beijing reserves the option of taking all necessary measures against outside forces that interfere.
坚决粉碎任何台独图谋.
Sounds like a threat to me. And speaking of threats, Global Times chief editor and OG wolf warrior Hu Xijin recently echoed this sentiment after the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan.
After the fall of the Kabul regime, the Taiwanese authorities must be trembling. Don't look forward to the U.S. to protect them. Taipei officials need to quietly mail order a 5-star red flag from the Chinese mainland. It'll be useful one day.
When they surrender to the PLA. Listen, using Afghanistan to gauge how the U.S. might react in the event of an attack on Taiwan is silly. First, Taiwan is a flourishing democracy with a militarized population of badass mofos who'd sooner die than live under CCP rule.
你看他们从以前到现在讲了多少次严重抗议，讲了多少次要打台湾，什么时候打？因为他们知道这个后果，他们是无法承受的。
Secondly, Taiwan is of incredible strategic importance to the U.S. and its allies. Failing to protect it would erode our alliances with Japan, Korea, Vietnam, etc. All right? Military invasion of Taiwan would mean World War III, which would likely mean the end of the world. And the CCP knows this. But as Xi Jinping relies more on nationalism to scapegoat China's problems, he runs the risk of looking weak lest he take action.
我还问，是你吗？
唉，你的神色已然暗淡，不及我往日的辉煌了。
It's not crazy to think that as China starts to feel the economic consequences of decoupling, Xi Jinping feels like he has no choice but to start a war. I mean, it might sound like an exaggeration, guys, but you have to understand how much this man cares about face.
中央军委主席习近平同志。中共中央政治局常委、国务院总理李克强同志，中共中央政治局常委、国务院副总理韩正同志。
He admitted to knowing about COVID as early as January 7th, 2020, but waited till January 23rd to cut off travel. Check that, domestic travel. We lost weeks in which the world might have done more to prevent a pandemic. But Xi's primary concern was not saving lives or containing the virus. It was saving his reputation and maintaining his grip on power. And as the world slowly wakes up to the crisis in Xinjiang or Hong Kong or Inner Mongolia, pick one, Xi Jinping's grip is slipping. He desperately needs the Beijing Olympics. He needs good PR. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to give it to him. Folks, we have a rare opportunity here to collectively give Xi Jinping the middle finger, to send a signal not only to the Chinese people, but most importantly to the Chinese Communist Party that Xi Jinping has got to go. And though I do want a full-on boycott, I would never support restricting an athlete's freedom to compete. But at the same time, China's openly engaged in hostage diplomacy. Canadians, do you guys really feel safe sending your athletes there? And Americans, can we stop fighting each other for like 1 minute, please? Japan's already stood up to protect Taiwan. What the hell are we doing? Are we a country that stands up to evil, or one overrun with greedy cowards?
You get a nation with one goal, to thrive and prosper, with a little country and rock and roll.
What? You don't think the Communist Party directly affects you? First of all, ask yourself why you've been wearing a mask for the last year and a half. Second of all, I don't know if you guys saw the video I did last month where I went to the erection of a CCP statue. Erection. It was a new statue erected in Liberty Sculpture Park. Is that okay to use erect in that way, Mom? Mom? Okay, it was added to the sculptures of Liberty Sculpture Park, which is north of Los Angeles, California. It holds Xi Jinping and the CCP responsible for COVID. Guess what? It was burned down. Yeah. Defamation of a political statue on U.S. soil, which you could argue constitutes as a terrorist attack. Okay, I don't know how that makes you feel, but it infuriates me. And while Biden's administration seems to be tough on China, I highly doubt their ability or willingness to spearhead a boycott without significant public pressure. Same thing goes for the corporate sponsors. So my fellow American countrymen, I am begging you, can we please stop fighting each other for 1 second and apply that pressure? 最后，我想对台湾的朋友说一句。首先，我不得不承认自己对你国的了解还是很肤浅，所以如果我接下来要问的这个问题听起来很傻的话，请你们谅解啊。台湾的艺人都到哪儿去了？难道你们国家的自主还不及中国市场重要吗？而且，我就想很不要脸的说，作为一个说唱歌手，台湾的说唱歌手们，你们都在等啥呢 ？MJ116 蛋宝 ，Dude 蛋宝，你改变了我的人生。You changed the way I look at language and music, and you made me fall in love with Chinese even more. 我知道你不怎么谈政治，但是政治的影响难道不是犹如空气一般包围着你的生活吗？台湾的未来呢？你们难道不关心吗？Okay, guys. This only works if we confront the problem together. Okay, I'm not saying that boycotting the Beijing Olympics is going to take down the CCP, but it's a good goddamn start, all right? I'm LeLe Farley. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.